Kong is not what is wrong with the Monsterverse. As a matter of fact, it is much more than just that. There are multiple different factors to justify why the Monsterverse is the way that it is. Point blank period, it's inconsistent. Heavily inconsistent. Obviously, as we know, there's a lot of focus on Kong, little focus on Godzilla, but there's a reason for that. Specifically in the Monsterverse, the IP for Kong does not belong to Toho. Legendary is capable of doing what they want with Kong more than they can Godzilla. At any point, regardless, Godzilla on the other hand, as we've seen when it comes to these films, is meant to be this overwhelming presence, the king of the monsters. It's been this way since 1954, leading up through all these different films from Toho, even into the Monsterverse. And that's kinda sorta seen as the case in the Monsterverse with Godzilla vs. Kong, Godzilla and Kong Supernova, Godzilla and Kong the New Empire, Godzilla King of the Monsters, and Godzilla 2014. Until you get to the part with Mechagodzilla, which becomes a whole thing in itself, but that's neither here nor there. The tone related to the movies is drastically different every single time, which I guess kind of makes sense. You try to change it up for each film to make it more interesting and not too predictable, but knowing how some of these films are with the characters, it's very iffy. The shift in tones for the movies from Godzilla 2014 and Kong Skull Island to something like Godzilla vs. Kong and GXK, the tone is drastically different. Some people love that, others don't. Some of the villains don't receive, this one may be a bit contentious, but some of the villains feel underdeveloped. Sometimes, especially when it comes to Mechagodzilla, they expect you to know who it is and don't give them as much buildup as needed within the film itself to justify the ending. They don't receive enough screen time or motivation before the final battle, which I fear might end up being the exact case with Space Godzilla and Supernova, similar to how it was within Godzilla vs. Kong with Mechagodzilla. Now, when it comes to the Monsterverse, there are two sides. There are the Titan side of things, and there are the human side of things. You can't have one without the other. You can't have strictly just Titans, as this isn't old Toho, it's just a regular ass movie at that point. You have to carefully coincide the two to make it make sense and actually make it enjoyable. A perfect example of this is Godzilla -1. The perfect balance between human characters and emotion and a monster that is Godzilla. Something the Monsterverse has not been able to fully capitalize on since the beginning of the Monsterverse in 2014. Something the Monsterverse hasn't been able to capitalize on since Kong Skull Island, with 2014's Godzilla and Kong Skull Island arguably, in my opinion, being some of the best built, having some of the best characters in their respective films. And in terms of a TV series, and that's not including the Monarch show, which is already great in terms of a human-based story, which I believe should be translated to the movies because that is the best cast we've ever gotten when it comes to humans in the Monsterverse. Kong essentially is easier to use in the Monsterverse because Legendary is not limited to what they can do with him, but like I said, very limited to what they can do with Godzilla. There are too many hindrances with Godzilla based off of what Toho wants from Legendary using their character that forbids Legendary from doing what they want with Godzilla without the fear of losing the character altogether. I believe they need to shy away from the Godzilla and Kong based films, as it's honestly low-key kind of ruining the Monsterverse overall. I think they should have their own selective films for a while, and then kind of like the Avengers are with Marvel, come back together for an even bigger threat. Hence Supernova, why I think it's too early for something like this. After the New Empire, they should have went their separate ways, Kong and Hollow Earth exploring that, Godzilla on the surface, doing their own thing, fighting their own respective monsters, and then with something like Space Godzilla coming back, making it work. There's a lot of nuance to this, but I do believe the Monsterverse could fix themselves after Supernova, maybe, depending on how that plays out. Hopefully all the leaks related to that are wrong, but it's not strictly just a Kong-based issue within the Monsterverse.